Doctor Who Episode 3, The Well. A excellent midnight sequel, or the sequel that literally nobody asked for. Well, in today's video we're going to be discussing that and answering that whole question, as well as reviewing and breaking down this episode. And there's a lot to break down as always, so go ahead, grab a snack and let's get into this episode, where we answer the most important questions, like does Ncuti Gatwa keep up his crying streak and make it to 100% crying streak for this series. Also, as we go through this episode and effectively review it, let's go by the BBC's stereotypes to find out who is going to be in power and also who is going to get shit on and made out to be the villain, because you'll definitely never guess, because they definitely don't make it obvious throughout the entire episode. Okay, so the episode starts with a scene inside of the TARDIS, and somehow we're supposed to believe that Belinda can somehow just fly the TARDIS now. I mean, she's a random nurse from the UK. She can pilot a complex time machine now, after travelling in it for like literally 48 hours at this point in the story. They then jump 500,000 years into the future. God, imagine the hate speech laws. Imagine the complete lack of freedom for the masses. Of course, unless you are a minority and could be considered a DEI hire. In that case, you are treated like a god, with a whole month every year to celebrate existing. They then prepare to enter the time period by getting some clothing changes, and as this happens, the song Toxic plays, a nice little throwback to the Christopher Eccleston era, when the same song actually played in the second episode of that era. Back when Doctor Who was loved by everyone and was less about painfully obvious left-wing propaganda and more about actually telling a good story. Maybe that explains that the very, very strong viewing figures throughout this entire period. Funny enough, thinking about it, this song actually perfectly describes Russell T Davies and Ncuti Gatwa. As from my recollection, didn't they tell some people who were like long-time viewers that if they didn't like the new era, the new Disney Plus era of Doctor Who, that they should go and touch grass? People who have been watching the show since 2005 are being told to touch grass simply because they don't like the direction the show is going in. How incredibly toxic. The funny thing is, though, that they actually did take that quite literally, and the viewing figures have dropped by a significant amount in the past under 12 months. All jokes aside, I genuinely liked the idea that they used this song in the episode. I think it was a really, really cool little throwback to the Christopher Eccleston era, and it actually did bring a little bit of a smile to my face, thinking, this is going to be a good episode. And to be fair, I wasn't really that wrong. Like, of course, there is a few issues that we are going to point out about this episode, but for the most part, it was a decent episode. Suddenly, the lights turned a different colour for some reason. Absolutely no explanation in the story as to why the lights changed colour. They just did, and that's it. And then the Doctor makes some gun fingers. I'm honestly quite surprised that he didn't go pew 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 pew. Once again, this just completely detracts from the Doctor as a character, because the entirety of the last 20 years he has been harping on about how much he doesn't like guns, and here Ncuti Gatwa is making gun fingers because it's cool, or some other reason that, again, we don't really get any explanation for in the episode. Oh my god. It's a spacesuit, not a pissing catwalk at a fashion convention. And everyone wonders why I can't take Ncuti Gatwa seriously. Every time somebody asks me that now, I'm just going to replay the clip of him going pew 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 with his little gun fingers. They then leave the TARDIS and enter the spaceship, which they are sort of going to be on for this next very, very short scene. And miraculously, they all seem to have the exact same spacesuit on. It's almost like they didn't develop spacesuits within the entirety of 500,000 years, and there is only one type of spacesuit which they all seem to have. Also, more conveniently as well, that there happens to be 2 spare helmets. That was lucky, wasn't it? So the Doctor and Belinda have the exact same spacesuits, but are missing the helmets, which are conveniently on the spaceship that they landed on. That brings up so many questions. Number 1, why do the Doctor and Belinda have these exact same spacesuits as the other people from the ship? Number 2, why do they have 2 spare helmets and not extra spacesuits to go with the helmets? Like, this seems like a very fixed crew of people, so why are there spare helmets? Like, literally, that there's only a limited amount of people who can go on a space exploration, and they usually pack the adequate amount of helmets and spacesuits for the amount of people who are going on said space exploration. In other news, these people must be thick as pig shit because they need a woman to scream at them to put a helmet on. Again, this genuinely just doesn't make any sense. This was 100% just done for the scene to be dramatic, because the scene needed to be dramatic. Otherwise it would just be a bit boring, wouldn't it, just putting space helmets on and stuff. And yeah, this was just clearly done to establish who was the leader out of this pack, and surprise surprise, it just happens to be a female character. I mean, not that this is a problem, but it just seems to be a very prominent thing that happens in Doctor Who. And if the women are the ones in power, then clearly we're going to find out where the men are. And this definitely doesn't draw a parallel to every other single episode where the men are literally framed as villainous characters. And for anybody who can't see this pattern going on, you genuinely mustn't have eyes. Or you must have one eye like a Dalek and it's been shot by a paintball, and you can't clear the eye stalk, so you mustn't have been able to see. Like, I get having both genders as people in power. It's definitely good to show both sides of the spectrum, but this is very, very one-sided. And it's obvious. Painfully obvious. So, as we go through the demonic colon of time, we end up seeing that they have survived, and the Doctor is setting up his little space vindicator thing. As at this exact moment, not when they were on the spaceship, the other people figured out that there was 2 extra people with them. Yeah, I repeat, they didn't find this out when they were on the spaceship and they literally came face to face with them. They figured this out once they jumped out of the spaceship and had landed on the planet. The Doctor then conveniently uses a psychic paper to get himself out of that situation, and do you know what? I actually like this. I very much like the idea of the Doctor using the psychic paper more in creative ways to get out of different situations and stuff like that, because the Doctor used to do that all the time, and it's something that they kind of forgot to use throughout the first season very much, so it's good that they brought it back in this season. Just a shame that the Doctor didn't use it in the hospital before cutting all of the power to a hospital. He literally could have turned off the life support systems of hundreds of people and would be deemed a mass murderer at that point. Now, I have to admit that even though Doctor Who pulled a classic one and decided to shoot a proportion of this episode in a Welsh quarry, the CGI from that Disney budget is really, really showing in this, and it's good. It's really, really good. I genuinely love all of the CGI shots in this episode, especially to enhance that quarry and make it feel like it is the surface of a planet. Beautifully done, and yeah, just amazing. They then enter the base and the Doctor then starts stripping. Okay, not quite stripping, but he starts taking off parts of his spacesuit that literally are to protect him, and then he gets told not to take it off for that exact reasoning. And then the reasoning that the Doctor uses for taking off his protective gear from his spacesuit is that he wasn't loving the look. Yep, solid logical dialogue there. 100%. They then move further into the base, and the worker tells Belinda not to touch the dead body. And at this exact moment, Belinda then decides to run over and start touching this dead body. And then she literally goes, oh, it might be alive. That's not what she was warning you of, though. This body could literally be carrying a deadly disease or leaking radiation. Like, just to remind you, this is a planet, and Belinda doesn't know what planet this is. Also, the body is quite clearly dead. It has been laying there for literally days without food or water. What did you expect the body to do? Like, suck moisture out of the air and start eating the walls or something? They then walk around and discover that some people have been shot, and some people have had all of their bones broken. But never mind all of that stuff. Belinda has something really, really important to tell us, and that is that all of the mirrors have been broken. Yes, out of all the things you could notice, Belinda, that is definitely the thing that you would notice. Because you can't see your own reflection when you're walking around the base. Yeah, I can't figure out how the Doctor didn't realise this, though. As we pan out of a shot showing that the Doctor is stood by a massive pile of broken mirror. The Doctor is supposed to be an alien and very, very observant of his surroundings, but didn't notice the massive pile of broken mirror literally centimetres from his body. Ironically, the bloke in this next scene says that he should have nuked the entire facility, and he's actually very correct in saying this, because number one, this could have saved a ton of people's lives. Because, well, yeah, first of all, the creature inside of this facility wouldn't have been able to get out and would have potentially been killed, and you also wouldn't have had to send a bunch of people to the facility to then be killed. So inadvertently, you would have saved a lot of lives by nuking the facility. But for some reason, the show decides to try and make it out like this is a bad thing. At this point, they then walk through a door and find a deaf person. And I actually really, really like how the deaf person was handled within this episode. And especially having a deaf character. Like, they could have gone overboard and given her some, like, really weird, insane, like, non-human superpower. Like the ability to feel vibrations through the air or something like that. And they didn't actually go ahead and do that, which I actually really, really like, and I do rate them for not going overboard on the whole thing. Literally just because of the fact that she has a disability. And really the clue is in the word as well, disability. That it actually does put her at a disadvantage when compared to the rest of the people, because she can't actually hear. That is one of her senses that are not functioning properly, therefore puts her at a disadvantage and makes her more vulnerable. And I actually really, really like how they use this, because making her more vulnerable does naturally make us feel a little bit more nervous for her. And when you have a victim in a story, making them feel very, very vulnerable is naturally a very, very good thing. That is really good writing. However, this next part, maybe not so much. At this point, she literally admitted to shooting and killing a person, regardless if she is deaf or not, for the safety of the entire crew who have just entered the ship. Somebody should probably contain her or shoot her. They'd be well within the right to do either of them two things, considering they're literally in a room with a certified self-admitted murderer. They then make this absolutely insane discovery. 500,000 years. They have such technology as speech to text. They are genuinely so far in the future in this episode. They should have way more advanced technology than some little hologram thing that puts literal, like, speech to text. It doesn't, like, even read their mind. Like, if they had a chip and the chip broadcast to all of these hologram things, that would be really, really cool. Or even, go one better, have a chip in the brain that actually tells the brain the information that the person needs to know. Instead of, going back 490,000 years and using such inefficient ways as sign language. But then again, I actually almost forgot, there's people in the real world who are developing such technology, such as people like Elon Musk. But I do have a slight suspicion that the showrunners of this specific season believe that he is some evil mastermind, because they were fed some ridiculous propaganda in their little bubble. So much so that they actually genuinely believe that to the T. They couldn't promote such evil in a Doctor Who episode, no. Although, ironically, would actually make more sense to use a brain chip, as, you know, 500,000 years into the future. It would seem a lot more progressive in that time period, I'm not gonna lie. The deaf person then basically says that her name is Elephany. That's all I could gauge from that, honestly. Or elephant or something. I think that's what we should call her, because apparently she's called Alice, which I did not get that at all from what she said, because she definitely did not say Alice. So yeah, I'm gonna listen to the deaf person who can't even say her name correctly, but I'm gonna listen to what she said. And from now on, I'm gonna call her Elephant in the story. I will play their game just this once, and I'll call her exactly what she calls herself, Elephant. She then claims that she is a cook. That's a bit stereotypical of Russell T Davies there, making the woman the cook. But then again, when TV shows are trying to desperately put women in as many different roles as humanly possible, inevitably they then just circle round and ultimately fixes itself. Belinda then helps Elephant with her grazed hand. At this point, she basically says that not knowing sign language and being a nurse is essentially against the law. My question is that it kind of seems insanely impractical that every single nurse should know sign language to cater to this fairly small, when you compare it to the entire population of the world, pretty small minority. I mean, if they're going to go that far, then they may as well get them to learn every single language on planet Earth. In that case, just so that they can cater to every single language in the entire world. Oh yeah, because that would literally be impossible and ridiculous to ask. As ultimately, it should be up to the other person to make sure that they can communicate adequately with the nurse. Or maybe in this specific case, you know, write down what you're trying to say. It's probably a lot less time consuming than the nurses having to all learn how to do sign language. In fact, the actress actually said that on average it takes 7 years to become fluent in sign language. So are you trying to suggest to me that every single nurse, by law, should waste 7 years of their life to learn sign language to come across, like, what? A handful of people who can't hear? That's literally like saying that nurses should just chop their legs off so that they can make disabled people feel more comfortable, or some bollocks like that, and feel like a more included or something. I don't know. Also, this person is just blatantly, consistently lying to the Doctor, saying that she knows nothing, and, well, that is quite factually a lie, and we see this multiple times that she does lie about this throughout this episode. So number one, why should we trust her at this point? And then number two, what benefit does it actually have to anybody to be lying in this situation? It literally makes no sense. And the show is still trying to make her feel like the victim, whilst painting her out to actually be the villain of this episode, because a lot of things actually point to her being somewhat evil in this episode. And, well, not even just evil, like the fact that she literally murdered somebody and then that was just ultimately justified as self-defense when we don't know the full context of the story at this point is quite baffling, I'm not gonna lie. The Doctor then does this, which either means I'm sorry or it could mean I'm very hungry. One of the two. They then go to the mining entrance of the well, the name of the episode, and they look down and they find out that everybody was killed by something that they can't see. And they find this out by checking the data logs, which were wiped, and then the Doctor unwiped them with his sonic screwdriver. How convenient. And at the same time as the Doctor, I mean the exact same time, although they have to play it out both consecutively because we can't just cut between different parts of the segments, the actual sentences that they're forming with the other people. We have to have the same conversation twice over to show that basically nobody knows that Earth exists. Belinda then sees a glimpse of the creature behind Elephant. Now, personally, I think that these little jump-scary second moments were a really, really welcomed addition to this episode, and it really, really helps to give this episode a more sinister and scary feel to it, because, yeah, overall, I think it was very, very well done. And then for some reason, Belinda then lies multiple times, stating that she didn't see anything behind her, even though it's quite obvious that she did see something, because everybody just asks her, what can you see something, or like, are you sure, etc. It's quite obvious that Belinda's seen something, and she just says no over and over again. At this point, Elephant is getting quite paranoid that other people are talking shit behind her back, and that she feels like left out or something, I guess. But the ironic thing is they did the exact same thing with the Doctor literally about 20 minutes ago. So apparently talking behind the backs of regular people is completely fine. But if you talk behind the back of a deaf person, that becomes a huge issue. And then they all have to, like, apologise for some reason as well. Like, it's... I don't really get it. Again, this just seems to be Russell at his finest, saying it's alright for some, but not for others. Which, again, makes absolutely no sense. Equality at its finest. At this point, Elephant does, like, a little spin. Remember that, because the plot completely forgets that later on. So, at this point, Elephant admits to all of them that she has been lying to them. And, again, she is aware of the creature behind her. She literally just admitted it, but chose not to tell them the entire time. And for some reason, instead of doing the logical thing in this situation and shooting her because she lied to you and put everybody in danger, they just completely trust her. Like, that is the most unhuman thing to do. Doctor Who, a show where you can gain somebody's trust by lying to them. I mean, personally, if somebody lies to me and I know that they've lied to me, I ain't trusting that person ever again. They're fucked. You lie to me, you just fucked the trust. Honestly. They then do this whole big revealing segment where they find out that the surface of the planet was made of diamonds, which was why the planet is called, like, Carbon-42 or something like that. It's something that's very, very similar to that, or that exactly. And yeah, then they find out in the big reveal that the planet is actually called Midnight. And it is the same Midnight that the 10th Doctor basically was on when he encountered the Midnight Entity. I actually really, really loved this reveal. And I loved how they kept it a secret up until the reveal. I didn't know that this would be the Midnight Entity, because I genuinely thought that there was more... It was more plausible to have the waters of Mars, the flood, basically, and having them as a character in this. And I thought that was more plausible from what we had already seen than what we actually got. So yeah, I'm really, really glad that they did manage to keep this a secret, because it made that actual reveal all the more impactful. Then a woman goes behind Elephant and she gets yeeted across the room. Elephant has actually seen this happen before with the other people who she killed in the exact same way, and does not think to tell them to stop, like, in a somewhat forceful way, or just move, because remember, Elephant can control who is exactly behind her. So if she moves, they won't get yeeted and killed across the room. She can literally prevent this from happening, but literally can't be bothered to do so. And again, we're supposed to like this character. Maybe just tell them the truth, because it might actually save their lives. This is a pretty unintended message that the Doctor Who is kind of ironically saying here. Always tell the truth, otherwise you might kill everybody. Belinda then gets some like little bolt things out of somewhere. I can't remember exactly where she got them from, but yeah, they basically just appear. Although it makes sense because the place is just a bit of a wreck anyway, so it looks like they've got loads of spare parts lying around anyway. So yeah, basically she uses this very complex diagram of 3 bolts to explain that there is something behind Elephant, and that that something is the thing that they have been kind of seeing, and what has been actually responsible for killing these people. And the funny thing is Elephant kind of controls where it is by pivoting, so it's still, funny enough, is her fault that all of this kind of stuff is happening. The Doctor then discovers that basically it is in the exact position of Midnight, and if somebody goes round to that position, they then get killed. And I actually really like this explanation, because we literally had 0 explanation as to why the planet was called Midnight beforehand, and now it's pretty cool that we find out that it's called Midnight because of how the Midnight entity works and how it actually kills people. And I really like that they added this in. I don't know whether it was like the intention from the beginning, or whether this is just something they wrote for this episode. The man soldier then declares a code red, and the show wants to make you believe that this is the evil person, when in fact the leader of the group is actually more incompetent and is literally trying to save the person who is murdering everybody in the entirety of this episode. Like, if you remember, this person has literally shot people and then not told people vital information which could have saved their lives. She's actually wholly responsible for this. So at this point, the plot actually proves that he was completely right to call a code red, because the code red is basically when the leader is incompetent and basically incapable of leading the group, which at this point, because she is technically protecting a murderer over her own people, her own squadron, yeah, the code red is very justified. Oh, and look at the face on that, like a slapped ass. Funny enough, Belinda gave that exact same facial expression when she didn't get what she wanted, or when she's very moody, which is probably about 95% of the time that she's on screen. As soon as he takes charge, this show makes him act like an absolute idiot for literally no reason at all. Like, he was very logical in this story up to this point, and then he just shifts and changes because the story needs it to, because basically the story wants you to think that this person is evil and responsible for the deaths of the next segment, when if you actually have a brain and a couple of brain cells to rub together, you can clearly tell that it's actually Elephant's fault because she moves around and kills everybody. But we'll get to that when we get to that scene. So at this point he launches a little investigation to try and see the creature behind Elephant, and basically tries to draw it out into the open so that they can kill it. Everything from this point on is framed as the man's fault, to make this brain-dead audience hate him for absolutely not really a justified reason. Because if you actually think about it, again, the person at fault here and the person who has the most control over the situation is Elephant, and she just isn't doing things to help herself. If she moves and turns her back on anybody, that person gets killed. And for some reason, the show completely forgets that this is a thing in this entire segment. Like, she starts off here, and then she literally moves around to this point, where you can clearly see that she should have killed multiple people at this point, because she's moved past like 4 people. How does the writer forget the main plot point of this entire episode. This is literally a key point of the episode, a key rule which shouldn't be broken. Again, this just shows that this episode is for people who don't want to think into it as much, people who don't want to think about what they're being shown on screen and just shut up and take it. We literally get a top-down view which shows that she should have killed 4 people. This is very, very obvious. Like, you can actually see the 4 people. And somehow this hasn't happened yet. She then starts turning around and miraculously starts killing people now. Like, for some reason it just started to work now, but didn't work 30 seconds ago. And yet, her turning directly kills people. This is as a result of her own actions. As multiple people are literally flung across the room and killed, the incompetent captain decides to kill the man. Remember, this literally isn't the man's fault. He called people around to walk around, yes, he did that, but ultimately it was Elephant who turned around and killed them. So why she killed the man and not Elephant is anybody's guess, because in this situation the most logical thing to do to stop all of the killing would be to kill Elephant. Even if this abides by the rules and the Midnight Entity jumps onto this person's back, the person could then sacrifice themselves, which they did later on in the episode, so that it's not like out of the question that this person could sacrifice themselves. This person could literally shoot Elephant, kill this one person, sacrifice themselves, and save everybody else. But she doesn't. She decides to kill the man, and this does absolutely nothing to stop the killing. Like, literally, if Elephant turns around, she could still kill plenty of people. And yeah, this just doesn't make much sense, because number one, she turned around earlier in the episode, and absolutely nothing happened. And number two, they literally justify the death and nobody questions this woman for killing the guy. Because the story framed him as the issue in this situation, when he literally didn't do anything to kill somebody directly. Elephant did them things to kill people directly, and she is still alive. Again, this is just a blatant, literally blatantly showing that that guy was completely in the right to call a code red because the leader is incompetent and killed the wrong person. Honestly, the only thing I can see on this is just this being a direct attack on men and male characters. And it is literally just a main theme of this entire series, that they make all the male characters evil and then make them do really, really bad things throughout the episode for some reason. Like, this is episode number 3. I've actually seen episode number 4 at this point of filming this. So let's take 4 episodes so far. Episode 1, Al was the villain, and he got killed, and then the Doctor laughed about it. So they made the villain of the episode a man, and then killed him. Episode 2, Lux was the villain, and Lux was a god, but also took the form of a male character. Episode 3, you have this soldier who did absolutely nothing wrong. He actually stuck to his protocol as a soldier and used his power in a way that would actually have benefited and saved lives of people. And he got killed for no reason other than because the story needed it to, and he was justified to be killed because he was the villain in this situation, where he wasn't a villain in this situation. It's just people who won't look at this or even analyse it for more than 2 seconds will just go and think, oh, I hate this character because the story wants me to hate this character, but I'm not going to question why. And spoilers, in episode 4, the main villain is a male. Who would have guessed? So yeah, that is 4 for 4. Literally 4 for 4. Half of the series is male villains. And I have a sneaking suspicion that the rest of the series is going to do this exact same thing as well. I also love how people are going to kick up a fuss about this as well. But again, that is just a case of you being the problem in this situation. Because if you think that it's okay for some and not okay for others, You are fine with women saying that they are being made villains, or disabled people saying that they are being made villains in stories, and that's bad, but are not okay with men saying that they are being made villains, and that's bad, then that is genuinely fucked. And just shows that this crap being pushed to people is actually working. And I want to say as well, it's not that I hated this story, because I genuinely enjoyed this episode, and from my first and second watches, I really enjoyed this. But when I started watching it more and more, the more you watch it, the more you can pick out about it, and these are some themes that are not really particularly an issue with this episode, but an issue with the writing of the entire series. And if I compare this episode to the previous 2 episodes, and next week's episode, this episode is the best by a mile. The idea is really good. I enjoyed the idea like a lot. The story, the sets, the costumes, the props all look genuinely amazing. It's just a shame that the story does contradict itself in some parts, because if it didn't have these contradictions and if it didn't have these errors, it would literally be a 10 out of 10 perfect Doctor Who story. So yeah, at this point, Elephant tries to guilt trip them by using the fact that she has a daughter to basically guilt trip them into saving her. When, if you actually think about it, this makes absolutely no sense. And again, this makes her look even worse, because she's doing this for selfish reason and doesn't care about her own daughter. She selfishly wants to go home, because if she actually went home, she would not only be putting her daughter in danger of being killed by this creature, she'd be putting in danger anybody in the entire world who steps behind her. Also, just a note as well, as we are keeping track of these kinds of things, the Doctor has still yet to save somebody in this episode, and I don't think that he will do in this episode again. Because this new Doctor can't seem to save anybody. He didn't save a single person in that thing. He just sat there, watched it happen, and then proceeded not to really care. As literally 2 minutes later, he's completely fine, and this has absolutely zero effect and doesn't get brought up for the rest of the episode. Like, they don't even mourn the deaths of these people. They just die, and the episode goes on. And then, in this moment, the one little bit of time where he could show some remorse and mourn the people, what does he go and do? He goes and makes it 3 of 3 and has a little cry because he can't contain his emotions. Now, this would have been a moment that I think would have been a little bit more acceptable to have cried at, because it genuinely seemed a bit more of a impactful moment for the Doctor. Just a shame he cries in every single episode, so we're completely desensitized to it and don't give a shit. But yeah, there we go. He's done it. 3 of 3. He's on a roll. Can he do it in the next episode? Tune in and find out. The Doctor has a plan. He says that there are actually 7 of them, but only 6 can fit in the little airlock thing, basically, that gets them back to their ship. So they're going to need to leave in 2 groups. Or they could do the sensible thing and leave Elephant in the base, because she has the attachment to the creature, and then all 6 of them just leave. They could literally leave in one trip and then nuke the place and save everybody's lives and prevent this from spreading across the universe and killing billions of people. I mean, if we look at this statistically, the Doctor has absolutely no issue with letting white male characters die. Alan died. He's a white male character. He didn't give a shit about that. We look in episode 2, the projectionist in the cinema, he sacrifices himself and dies. The Doctor didn't give a shit about that either. And then in this episode, a white male character gets brutally murdered for doing absolutely nothing wrong, and then the Doctor doesn't give a shit about that either. But yeah, but what deaf woman, I suppose they can't let her die at this point, because it would be considered an evil thing to do, when letting other people die it's definitely not evil. It's definitely not an evil thing to do. They then decide to put an end to this and try and get the creature out into the open. They do this by shooting each end of the pipe which holds mercury. only little issue with this is that it somehow breaks and goes to the middle and turns into this huge wall of mercury. Doesn't really make sense. If you shoot a pipe on either end, it's just going to spray out of the other ends. You don't shoot a pipe on either end and it just cracks all the way to the middle and pours out. That's not how it works. The creature then throws her out as basically she seemingly escapes from this whole thing. They then escape and the first group leaves the airlock, which is Elephant and the other two other crew members. And then the life sign reader actually shows that there are 4 people, which, funny enough, shows that the Midnight Entity might actually still be in that airlock and have escaped the building. I did an entire theory video on the fact that there could be 2 Midnight Entities or even multiple different Midnight Entities, and that is why we see the Midnight Entity inside and also outside of the place simultaneously. But this could also just be a big filming mistake and just an inconsistency for some reason. There is then a huge bang and apparently the entity is still there, despite literally a few seconds ago we get a big cinematic shot where it pans to the reader and specifically shows us that there are 4 people within that airlock. So yeah, this is either poor writing or that there is 2 entities, which never really gets explained at all throughout this entire thing. Like, throughout this entire episode, we've only ever thought that there was 1 entity. Also, I do just want to point out that they just casually let somebody who murdered, like, multiple people, like, by definition, she is actually a serial killer at this point, and they just let this person out unrestricted to their ship. You let a murderer escape. That's really, really smart. Great job, Doctor. You have just doomed the entire universe, potentially, with a person who genuinely doesn't have an issue taking people's lives. They then find out that the entity is actually on Belinda, and they find that out by going, "Oh, the entity isn't on me." And then they look to the next person and they go, "Oh, the entity isn't on me." And then they look to the next person and go, "Oh, the entity isn't on me either." And Belinda goes, "Oh, I think it's on me." Belinda, you could have literally just saved so much time and potentially lives by literally just owning up and saying, "I think the entity is on me." That saves the entire thing, and they could deal with it a lot faster at this point. They then decide to shoot her in a specific shot which has a chance of not killing her. And then the creature gun goes onto the captain's back instead. And then the captain runs out to the well and jumps down, basically killing herself, and also presumably killing the Midnight Entity. And I genuinely think this is one of the strongest scenes of the series, because they do this entire monologue. It's really, really nicely done. We've had this character build throughout the entire episode. We have this character doing courageous things, and then she does this one final act, sacrifices herself to save other people, which is just such a beautiful message to put out there, and a really, really great one to also put out there as well. And as I said, I really, really like this message because a lot of modern shows tend to push and avoid things like duty and instead cover personal interest and emotions instead of actual duty, which duty is a very, very important message, which is the act of doing something because you have to do it, not because of your own interests, but to essentially be for the greater good and essentially to save other people. So yeah, a really, really good job to Sharma Wolfall, who actually wrote this episode, because I think that is genuinely the best scene of this entire series so far. And yeah, I genuinely don't think that we'd ever get this from a modern day Russell T Davies script, so it is quite nice to see this in this episode, and I really, really do love this scene. It genuinely has impact. Also, why didn't they do this with that other character in the Robot Revolution? This again shows very, very poor character building from Russell T Davies, as we basically get told that they have this woman has an off-screen relationship with the Doctor, and this isn't shown to us at all. It's just told to us, and then we have to care because it's told to us. But nobody cared about her death or found it emotional at all because we didn't see any of it, and we saw her on screen for 5 seconds and then she died. The Doctor and Belinda are then back in the TARDIS as the Doctor did not actually save her. Yeah, another crew member actually ended up saving Belinda's life. The Doctor, I suppose, walked back to the room and carried her in the TARDIS or something. And then, oh my god, Mrs. Flood, because we have to add her into every single episode for absolutely no reason. Yeah, this didn't really add anything to the story. I don't know why they had to add this in there, because it didn't really have any addition or impact to the story. Like, I much prefer her appearance in episode 1, because she actually has some involvement within the story, because she's actually Belinda's neighbour. There is then this big final scene where two teammates are there, and one said to the other, I think there's something behind you. And it's really obvious at this point that one of the Midnight entities have escaped, or in some capacity. Literally look back at the life sign radar thing, because this is just so obvious that one of these creatures has survived and escaped within that airlock. It genuinely is very obvious. But yeah, overall, I think this was a very decent episode. I genuinely enjoyed this episode. It 100% is the best episode of the entire Ncuti Gatwa era, with no questions asked. My favourite episode of the Ncuti Gatwa era. So yeah, well, huge probs to the writer of this episode for making this such a decent episode, because the writing overall in this episode was much better than previous episodes. So yeah, really good in that sort of thing. I would even go as far as to say that this was actually on par with the 60th anniversary specials. So yeah, good job. And yeah, it was just genuinely fun to watch, because they weren't trying to crowbar the message into the episode every 5 seconds. So yeah, way better than the first 2 episodes of this season. Actually, I'll take that back a little bit, because I did like Lux a little bit. So way better than the first one, and again, much better than the second one. Also, I think another factor to why this episode is just genuinely so good is the fact that we had a returning monster, because that is something we seem to be lacking a lot of in the Ncuti Gatwa era and the new Disney Plus era in general. Returning characters, they seem to pull them out of the bag for the finale, and not really any of the other big episodes in the beginning or the middle of the series. And also, yeah, that does provide a lot more familiarity, and it does give that real good Doctor Who feeling to this episode. This episode felt like Doctor Who, and not some crappy American parody to Doctor Who instead. So yeah, good episode, really decent episode. But yeah, I want to know what you guys thought of this episode. Let me know your thoughts on this episode in the comments down below. Also, I want to let you guys know that I actually have a bit of a project that's a little bit in the works at the moment as well. I am soon going to be trying to write my own Doctor Who fan film, and if you want to support this project, because I want to do this project as a Doctor Who movie from the fans to the fans, and I want this to be something that's a really high quality, well written story that is just the best work that I can make it. So yeah, if you want to support this fan film and you want to help me fund and create this fan film, then just all you need to do is hit that subscribe button on this channel and smash a like on this video, and go ahead and watch all of my other Doctor Who content, or any of my other content in general. It all really does go and help out with creating something like this. Because yeah, this is going to be a huge, very expensive project to make, so any help is massively appreciated. And although we don't actually have any merchandise or anything like that, because again, I don't really want to do anything like a Patreon or like a GoFundMe or something like that for this fan film and to raise money for this fan film. I want to do something creative, and I want to give you guys something back in return for helping to fund this. So I want to do some merchandise for this fan film at some point, but it's very far off at the moment, and I don't think it's going to be happening anytime soon. So if you want to support this as much as you can do. You can become a channel member on this channel, and that would massively support it, and it is only $1.99 a month. And you can also super thanks on these videos as well, and that is just another way that you guys can help me create more content like this, and also help me with being able to fund and create things like Doctor Who fan films, or even fan films in general in the future. But yeah, that is basically the end of this video, so thank you guys so much for watching this video. Please comment, like and subscribe as always, and I'll see you all in the next video. Peace.